Hello, everybody. Welcome to Like Inc. As you know, in our sessions, we invite entrepreneurs, startup founders, where we can talk about their journey, what they've been through, what they've learned so far. Today, we are lucky to have Nima Feizi, who is the co-founder of ARISE Wearables and a very well-versed innovation manager with 3+ years of experience in developing SaaS products. Nima has recently joined the Maple Leaf Foods Inc. as a Digital Innovation Analyst. Nima, thank you so much for hopping on this call with me.
Oh, my pleasure, Thanks for having me.
So let's kick things off. Nima, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and what inspired you to start ARISE Technologies or Wearables?
Sure thing. So I was born and raised in Iran. I left Iran with my parents when I was 7 years old to come to Toronto. And I've been here ever since. And I studied biomedical engineering in university here in Toronto. And then it was actually interesting because while I was a student there, I met some really good friends of mine, Gordon and Branavan, and we were all classmates. And that's where the story really starts, where we decided to take on some challenges with our biomedical knowledge that we had accumulated through courses and things like that. And so we decided to meet with a doctor who had a problem he wanted to solve with technology. And that actually wound up opening my eyes into what it means to innovate with technology to solve a problem for the world. And we ended up winning a few awards based on the innovative solution we had for the doctor. And that opened my eyes to the world of startups and entrepreneurship. And then I dedicated my whole master's degree to a master's in innovation and entrepreneurship at Toronto Metropolitan University. And over there, I added skill sets and knowledge from the foundations of entrepreneurship into my existing skill set as a trained engineer. And so I had this double-edged sword, educationally, I had this double-edged sword where I had the technical skill set and the sort of marketing and the innovation and the foundations of an entrepreneurial mind to sort of bring them together and create a value for a customer base. And that's my background and a little bit of an insight into how ARISE Wearables was started. Currently, as you mentioned, I just joined Maple Leaf Foods as a digital innovation analyst, where I'm helping the company bring really innovative technology into their infrastructure, such as going paperless with all the documents, using iPads instead of forms, and also doing some interesting work with VR and AR as well. So that's really exciting too. Also be a part of a larger organization and push innovation into that. That's something I'm enjoying a lot as well.
That's awesome. I love that journey. For anybody listening, Nima was one of the first people I contacted when I was about to join Ryerson University for their program, Engineering, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship. And I've had a lot of good conversation with him. Moving on, can you tell us a bit more about your current venture right now, ARISE Wearables, and what makes it unique?
Yeah, so ARISE, the interesting thing about this company was it started off when we were all students. So I mentioned my two friends, Branavan and Gordon. They're all pretty much my co-founders. And so the vision that we had for the company was to create the most seamless experience of technology possible. And the best way that we can achieve that is actually to not give you a wearable technology like you have some people have an Apple Watch or something like that, where you have to wear. But we actually put the technology into something you're already wearing. Right? And that's a key difference there. So what makes companies like ARISE unique is that we're leveraging this technology called electronic textiles, which is essentially microchips, right, and systems inside fabric. But the interesting thing about electronic textiles is it's so recent, the developments, that I think it's actually a little bit ahead of the time. The timing, the optimal era for electronic textiles hasn't even come yet. It's a little into the future, but you would not be able to tell if the t-shirt I'm wearing is a regular t-shirt made of regular fabric, or if it's a smart t-shirt that's, for example, measuring my heart rate. Instead of these buttons, you might have sensors there, or it's measuring how much my muscles are flexing when I do this, right? You wouldn't be able to tell because it just looks and feels just like a fabric. That's what makes ARISE unique, is we're doing that specifically for the world of sports, performance, and medical rehabilitation. And the form factor that we had was socks. So we had these sensors embedded into the fabric of socks.
That is very fascinating, honestly. I know starting a startup could be challenging. Sometimes you have to find the right fit, find out customers' needs, and also very challenging part could be finding the right partner to be a co-founder or complement your skill sets. So what are some of the biggest challenges you faced in starting Arise and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, so I was a first-time founder, and you know, people watching, if there's aspiring entrepreneurs, they're going to be first-time founders as well. There's a lot you learn. There's a massive learning curve when you're founding your first startup. One of the biggest challenges that every founder goes through is that 0 to 1 problem, right? And I think Peter Thiel wrote a book about this called 0 to 1. And essentially the idea that the most difficult step for your entire journey as a founder for your company is to go from nothing to one customer, one use case, right? The first dollar, right? To go from 0 to 1 is always the most difficult thing to do. And that's certainly the case with Arise. So the biggest challenge that we had was to put together the DNA of the company, you know. And here's what I mean by DNA. So this is one of the things we learned at our master's program. Any company could be dissected into three fundamental pieces of information, right? First one is desirability. Desirability means who is what you're trying to create, the product or your service, is it desired by the people? In other words, is there a market need for it or a market want for it, right? Number two is feasibility. And feasibility means in terms of the product and the software, are you capable of engineering the solution, right? Are you able to deliver the solution to the people? So you know what they want, which is their desire. Now the question is, are you able to give to them the solution? Are you able to make the product? And the third piece of DNA is the viability. And viability has to do with a sustainable, repetitive business model that's hopefully positive. So in terms of you're profitable, right? And viability means you know what the people want, your desirability. You know that you can give it to them, which is your product is capable of being made, it's feasible. Now the question of viability is, are you able to make it and deliver that product to your customers at a price that is lower than what it costs you to make it, so you can profit from the difference, right? And once you have all those three, you have the ingredients of a true startup in your hands. But getting there is, you know, I just laid out the three words and what they mean. Easy on paper, but to truly establish a startup that validates all those three criteria, it's difficult. It's a lot easier said than done, and that is one of the biggest challenges there. A lot of startup ideas, believe it or not, they fail at the desirability stage. You know, people with shiny object syndrome, they make a product that they think is amazing, especially technical minded engineers, right? Because we make really cool tech that is so cool. Surely people are going to love using this. But then we realize after doing some talks with customers, they don't really have a desire for it. So it doesn't work. Other times they do have a desire, but what we're trying to create is just so difficult to make. The engineering is so complex, right? Maybe it'll get simpler with time, but right now we just can't make this product at a quality that we want to do it with. And that's a problem with feasibility, right? And you don't have a startup there either. And then last but not least, and I think this is one of the most common problems, is the viability problem, right? You have a startup, you have a product that you can make, you have people who want it, but you're having difficulty with marketing, you're having difficulty with the numbers, right? You're just not profitable, and that's a viability issue, and right. So if you all those three are working well, then you have a really successful startup. And so those are always the challenges for us personally. So that challenge applies to every startup across the board. And the personal challenge that we had at Arise was fundraising. This is also a challenge that is very common. There's one thing that we have firsthand experience with is it's just the difficulty of the funding landscape over the last, especially when the Silicon Valley Bank collapsed. Then all of the investment, this was recently, all of the investors, most of the investors, they just pulled their funding back and reserved it to save their existing portfolios, right? To have cash flow for your existing portfolios in case they need a bridge round. So they weren't really looking to invest big money into innovative unproven entrepreneurs and unproven ideas in early stage startups. But it's getting better now. So the funding will get better now, and we can get to the challenges and the learning that I had through our fundraising campaign with ARISE.
Beautiful. And you did talk about learnings and few things that are important for entrepreneurs, especially starting a tech startup from ideation to commercialization. I want you to tell us about where does ARISE stand today? And you did talk about your co-founders, how important it is for any startup owner or entrepreneur to find out the right team that they can work with in order to complement each other's skills.
Yeah, I mean, I can answer this from the perspective of investors, actually. So when an investor is getting a pitch deck and they have a prospective investment in front of them, they're going to look at the 3 T's, they call it, right? The 3 T's are traction, timing. And traction means, do you have customers? Do you have cash flow that you're generating, right? Timing is just the timing of the market. Is this a trend? Are you ahead of the market? And then the third T, which in my opinion is arguably the most important, they're all really important, but the third T is team. So they look at the team. And the team is like, imagine you have to, choose a spouse, right? How important is that decision for us to choose a spouse? Like whether you're a man or a woman, or it's one of the biggest decisions of our life, right? Because we're choosing someone that we're going to be spending a lot of time with, and they're going to be a part of our journey through life. Well, it's the exact same thing when it comes to founders. It's almost as important who you choose to found your startup with. Why? Because you're going to be going through lots of ups and downs with them. It's going to be a very difficult journey that you're going to be a part of. And the same thing with your investors, right? So who you choose as your investor is almost more important than the funding you get. Who gives you the money, in my opinion, is more important than the money itself. Because with your investors, it's almost like worse, because your investors, you're just tied to them, right? It's going to be very difficult to get a divorce with your investors. You can get a divorce with your founders; they can leave, right? You can get a divorce with your spouse, but with investors, even more difficult actually. So the team has to do with not just your founders, but your investors as well. Extremely important. And in terms of your question of where ARISE is right now, so currently my team and I, we got lucky. We knew each other even before our idea of a startup came to fruition. We were classmates and we started off as friends. And then we became co-founders. So we were friends first and then co-founders after. And that's a luxury that is very rare, right? Usually people go out looking for a co-founder, and the first experience they have with someone is they met them as a co-founder, right? But we actually met as friends, and we had a relationship that was well developed before we took on this challenge. And I think that's a rare case, but we just got lucky there. We're still great friends. Myself and my 3 co-founders are all working full time. So we're all currently in the industry, and we've effectively been in a transition phase with ARISE, thinking about what we want to plan for the future, because we have different ways that we can go about it. And we can go into the differences between a 9-to-5 role in industry versus entrepreneurship, because I've experienced both. Right now, I'm in the 9-to-5 area. I'm still focusing on ARISE as like on the side. We're creating a plan to see how we want to bring it forward. But I've had 3 or 4 years of founder experience as well. And so I'd love to dissect the difference there as well, because there's a lot of interesting opinions. And I think one of the sides gets a little stigmatized, right? The 9-to-5 is a stigmatized area of work, but I actually think it's fantastic. And so right now we're considering, because we're part-time right now, we could hire a new CEO for the company, which is an idea that not many founders consider. You could absolutely hire a new CEO, and you guys could still be the founding team with a new CEO, right? And we'd be working on it on a part-time basis when the CEO would be full-time. Or we could, just consider ARISE right now as a like a side hustle, like we're moonlighting it. Or we could pull like a PayPal type of situation where we put the idea on park, wait until the environment matures around it, technology becomes better, cheaper, more feasible, And then in a few years down the line, we revisit the startup and pick back up, like how Elon Musk is doing with PayPal right now, with X.com.
Perfect. I think there's a lot to unpack there. You did talk about how important it is for any startup to have that great relationship with the investors. When I was a student of entrepreneurship, we were told that location is important. Where do you see Toronto standing today in terms of starting a tech startup?
Yeah, some people were calling when I was studying, some people were calling Toronto the new Silicon Valley. And actually, we have Collision Conference coming up next week, which is a huge conference for entrepreneurs and startups from all across the world, especially in North America. I think Toronto has a bright future. You know, the Greater Toronto area, for the entrepreneurial landscape, the founder landscape is great. And by the way, there's a lot of incubators now and accelerators like the IBZ, which is affiliated with our program in downtown Toronto, the Innovation Boost Zone. Highly recommend for early stage startups. There's also the DMZ, which was part of the Toronto Metropolitan University campus, but it's an accelerator. And I think it was ranked the best accelerator, university-based accelerator in the world. So we have an ecosystem, and we have people that are like determined to get our entrepreneurial and innovative ecosystem to improve and become one of the best in the world. And I think that's in the direction that we're heading. So if anybody has an idea, Toronto is a fantastic place to start. It doesn't matter what industry you're in or what idea you've got. It's a very well-connected city. It's got tons of entrepreneurs. Our investors are becoming better. We're getting more investors. We're getting investors that are better connected to the entrepreneurial community through these incubator zones. So it's a bright future for Toronto, I think.
Can you share some advice for aspiring entrepreneurs? Especially, you did talk about a little bit about those entrepreneurs who are fully committed to a job of 9 to 5, and they have a side gig as well, and then they turn that side gig into a full-time startup and then leave their 9 to 5. So do you have some advice for people like that?
Yeah, for sure. So a 9 to 5 is a great opportunity to have if you have the privilege of getting a stable job, because you get to learn a lot. I'm a big proponent of the idea that as long as you're in your 20s, you just got to try as many things as you can. You know, 20s is the age where you explore and you build skill sets, where you're building your reputation, you're building your skills, you're building your wisdom, and you're building your network. And in your 30s, you really have to figure out, okay, I've tried all these different things. This is what I'm good at, and this is what I like. So in your 30s, you go all in and you focus on a specific goal, on a specific, career path, and you make money, and you develop your career in your 30s. And then 40s and 50s onwards, you can focus more on like family and raising children if that's what you're interested in. But you could afford to mess up your entire 20s, right? And this is what Gary Vee says this, you can afford to mess up for the next decade and still be young enough to chase your dreams, your entrepreneurial dreams. And so for the people that are considering, jumping straight into the water of entrepreneurship, I'll just give you two from the perspective that I had. There's gonna be suffering involved, right? It's not gonna be easy. And the biggest piece of advice that I have is to take risks early while you can. Before you get your mortgage, before you get your car payments, before you get married and have kids, those are all things that will prevent you from taking big risks because you have a lot to lose in that time of your life. But when you're broke and young, you got nothing to lose. What's going to happen if you fail? You're just going to go back and make your bed. You have nothing to lose. So as long as you're young, that's where you should be taking the risk. So if you have a full-time job, try to spend the weekends and the nights building or moonlighting your small little startup, right? It doesn't have to be big also. There's plenty of employees that are millionaires, right? Some employees are millionaires just through their 9 to 5 job, like salespeople are very successful. And other employees are perfectly happy with their job, but they have this other streams of income, right? From their side. They have these businesses that they're running on a part-time basis. Maybe they've delegated people to work with them full-time. So they're juggling a full-time job and a part-time empire, and they're doing very well off and they're very happy. So the idea that you have to, say no to the 9 to 5 and you throw yourself in the deep end of entrepreneurship is not really true, you know. And most of the time, actually, a really successful, balanced life is as a mix, right? It's a mix of a day job and some good investments, real estate investments, some online businesses, that's some consulting work that you can do on the side. But for those of the audience that are really interested in going deep into Silicon Valley type of startup, you're going to suffer, you know. So the biggest thing that you can do there is to immerse yourself with people that are founders just like you. And that's why the biggest reason why I say the future is bright for Toronto is there's a ton of people out here that you can connect with, a ton of people that are on the same path as a founder just like you. So that's my advice. Just surround yourself with people that are on a similar journey to you.
That is awesome. I echo with whatever you're saying. You did mention about the challenges, about the suffering. I think one of the thing that a lot of entrepreneurs personally, I've experienced at the time, like a lot of entrepreneurs, they don't have time. So what are some productivity tips that you can share with our listeners?
Use Notion, which is really, really good. Just to organize your plan for the day, organize your projects, and to set priorities to your tasks. So one of the tips I recommend, I don't know if you've heard about the Eisenhower matrix. It's where you sort of divide your tasks into 4 different quadrants, and based on how you organize them, it's called the Eisenhower matrix. You guys can look it up. You essentially have a very organized way of prioritizing what you need to do now versus what you can delete, activities and tasks you can delete, and what you can delegate, and what you should save for later. That helps a lot with clarity, right? Especially, so one of the reasons it's difficult to be a founder is because no one's holding you accountable. Unlike my current role at Maple Leaf Foods, there's a system, right? We've got people above, they have people above them. There's always an accountability factor there. But when you're the founder of your company and you're like a 20-something-year-old CEO, right? Who's holding you accountable? Hopefully you have mentors, and hopefully you have other founders that can fill that gap a little bit. But the difficulty is you don't know what to prioritize. You don't even know what to work on. And that's why getting a mentor is really, really important. I had a great mentor, and Harry Gandhi, fantastic. So have a great mentor on your side. That's huge, and that'll actually help you with your organization a lot. But a couple of tools that I can recommend are engineering your environment and habit stacking. So you can tell I have a piano here, and I've been playing for like the last few years very, very casually. I just go on YouTube, find songs that I like, and then I just play the piano, train myself online on how to play. I only play the songs that I'm interested in because, you know, then I learn like that, right? Because I have fun playing. But the reason I have improved my piano skills is only because my piano is within a few steps of my desk, right? So every time I'm exiting or entering the room, it's right there. I could just take a couple of minutes, practice a few notes, 5 minutes, and then sit back down on my chair, right? I've engineered this environment to make it easy to fall into the habit of playing a piano, right? And if there's something that I don't want to do, let's say I don't want to play video games anymore, right? What I would do is the opposite. I would engineer my environment to make it difficult to turn on my PS4. What does that mean? That means I would actually physically take my PS4 and put it on the top shelf. So if I ever get the urge to play, I would have to go on the top shelf and bring it down. When I'm too lazy to do that, right? So I just rather play the piano because it's easier, it's more accessible. So it's not discipline, right? I'm just hacking my environment, and it sort of gets rid of the discipline that's required. It lowers the discipline that you need to follow the habit. So engineer your environment. That's fantastic. And the second is habit stacking. So every night there's certain habits that you have to do on autopilot, like brushing your teeth, right? So if you want to introduce a new habit to your routine, let's say I want to do 15 push-ups a day. Instead of finding the time, oh, I have to do 15 push-ups a day now. You know, instead of setting an alarm or something, you could stack your habits. And what that means is you stack the new habit that you want on top of an old habit that is developed. So if my habit of brushing my teeth is developed and I do it every single night, then what I can do is I could tie my push-ups to my brushing. So when I finish my toothbrush, and then I do 15 push-ups. And I do that every single night, right? And that makes it so much easier to do your push-ups because it's like a mental note, right? It triggers your mentality. Oh, I'm brushing my teeth, and then I'll do 15 push-ups afterwards. So stack your habits, make it a lot easier to follow them, and engineer your environment. And don't forget to get mentors, because that's my biggest piece of advice.
That is amazing. I loved everything you just said, especially the productivity tip. I was listening to a podcast where the person was talking about sleep. A lot of people have problems taking their cell phones to the bedroom. So there were some rules shared. For example, if you're using your cell phone in the bedroom, make sure you use it while you're standing up. So when you're sitting down, your cell phone is not in your hand. So that really forces you not to use it during your time when you want to wind down. You did touch on the important point of having a mentor. What are some of the qualities that a mentee can have to have a good mentor?
It's a great question. So one of the biggest qualities that would make a good mentee, and I could also put a few qualities of a good mentor that I've found for myself. The great quality of being a mentee is to, first of all, not be afraid to ask questions when they pop up. So be very, very clear and honest with your mentor. And second of all, the mark of a great mentor is one that doesn't tell you what to do, but someone that is a few steps ahead of you so that they know the landscape and the problem that you're in, and they could lay out all the solutions for you clearly, right? And give you all the pros and cons, and then lay it on you, the mentee, to decide which path you want to take. So a great mentor is one that sort of gives you all the options. This is the pros of this, cons of this, pros of this, cons of this. Now, Nima, you decide. I laid out all the options for you and gave you my insights. Now you can decide. That's a great relationship, right? And as a mentee, you just have to be consistent, right? Force yourself to be consistent. Sometimes it's hard. Like for myself, I'm not that consistent with my mentor. That's one of the things that I need to work on. But the more consistent you are with your checkups and check-ins, the better it'll be.
That is awesome. Just to conclude our conversation, thank you so much for doing this. I've learned quite a ton. Do you have any resource, could be a podcast, a book that you want to share with our listeners?
So if you are an aspiring entrepreneur, one of the books I'm sure Lake also read is The Lean Startup by Eric Ries, right there in the blue. Highly recommend this book. It might be a tiny bit outdated. There's a lot of things that could be added to it in terms of, the attention economy that we're in right now. But it's a fantastic book. It lays all the foundations of entrepreneurship in there, and the Lean Startup. If you're looking to do a company that's not much of a side hustle, but it's like a potentially venture-backed idea, then read Venture Deals by Brad Feld, I think. And that's fantastic for if you want to go into VC and raise money there, right? Then I have some podcasts. I think Diary of a CEO is the name. That's a fantastic podcast I recently jumped on. It's fantastic. It's got all sorts of diverse group of people coming on there. And Alex Hormozi is a guy on YouTube who actually pushes the most high quality free content probably that exists in all of YouTube for entrepreneurs. So Alex Hormozi is the name, and he's absolutely fantastic. He's an entrepreneur himself. He's got a ton of valuable content for free on YouTube. So I highly recommend those things.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Nima. I will put the links of these books, and also Stephen Bartlett, who runs the Diary of CEO, is an amazing podcast you should check out. For anybody listening, I will also share his LinkedIn link for you in the description. It's been a great pleasure talking to you, Nima. Thank you for taking us to the journey that you've been through, and thanks for hopping on this session with me.
Thank you very much, I'd be happy to chat with anybody. Just reach out to my LinkedIn. I'm always available.